In this video essay, we will be exploring the opening scene of Children of Men and analysing the visual and oral storytelling used by the director Alfonso Cuarón. We will also demonstrate the knowledge of the technical processes and procedures used by the production team to create the scene.
Day 1000 of the Siege of Seattle.
The Muslim community demands an end to the army's occupation of mosques.
The Homeland Security Bill is ratified. After 8 years, British borders will remain closed. The deportation of illegal immigrants will continue. Good morning. Our lead story.
The world was stunned today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet.
The film opens on black with the voiceovers of two TV news broadcasters reading out the news. The news paints the world of the Children of Men to be more xenophobic than our own, with more war as Seattle is referenced as being under siege and Britain has been in solitaire for 8 years, and that the youngest person on the planet has died. Alfonso has included the news report as a great piece of exposition that lets the viewer know instantly that the world in this film is not like their own. It is also clear that Alfonso made these voiceovers appear over black to really draw the viewer into what is being said, and the audience is not being distracted by visual stimuli.
Baby Diego was stabbed outside a bar in Buenos Aires after refusing to sign an autograph.
Witnesses at the scene say that Diego spat in the face of a fan who asked for an autograph.
After the news broadcasters announce the death of the youngest person on the planet, the camera cuts from black to show a coffee shop full of concerned adults watching the news on the television. This shows the viewer that the death of baby Diego is of high importance and that the people of the world in Children of Men had placed value in Diego, and their hope for a future of humanity has been lost.
He was killed in the ensuing brawl. The fan was later beaten to death by the angry crowd. Born in 2009, the son of Marcelo and Silvia Ricardo, a working-class couple from Mendoza, he struggled all his life with the celebrity status thrust upon him as the world's youngest person.
In walks our protagonist, Theo Cuarón, who is not as taken back by the news of the death like the other seen in the coffee shop. He simply pushes through the crowd and orders a coffee. Sure, he watches the TV for a few seconds, but then leaves straight after receiving his coffee. This indicates that our protagonist lost faith years ago. He has accepted that humanity is doomed long before the death of baby Diego.
Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet, was 18 years, 4 months, 20 days, 16 hours and 8 minutes old.
Cuarón then leaves the coffee shop and the camera follows. The shaky camera technique is utilised by cinematographers to make the viewer anxious, then spit them out once the violence concludes, according to PremierBeat.com. This clearly is what is going on in this scene, which you will see later on. As we exit with our protagonist, we go out onto a London street, which is very unlike our own. It is in the future, and visual clues of electronic billboards on the side of buildings and cars show us that. And if that isn't clear, a date Cuarón appears moments later on the screen. If that Cuarón was not included, another visual clue to indicate that the film was set in the future would be the inclusion of the Shard next to St. Paul's Cathedral in the background of the shot. This film was released in 2006 and the Shard was not completed until much later in 2013. Cuarón and his production team CGI composed the skyscraper into the shot based off designs available during production in 2005 and 2006. The shaky camera encircles our protagonist as if he is being entrapped by a sinister force. He is unaware of it though, simply preparing to drink his coffee along with a drop of alcohol, then an explosion. The act of violence foretold by the use of the shaky camera. The explosion is another great piece of exposition and further indicates to us as a viewer that this world is dangerous, unbalanced and uncontrolled, despite the sheer amount of police officers shown in the scene. In this video essay, we would also like to discuss the colour palette used in the scene. As you can see in this shot, the colour teal is used repeatedly on the wall, on an old lady's coat and on a guy's collar. This colour is also presented in exterior shots on a building, on signage and on a van. Why is teal being used so much? It could be for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the colour teal is fairly washed out colour and helps show how exhausted and how washed out the world is. After all, everyone in the scene is either sad, apathetic or hurt. The teal colouring used in this film is also similar to the duck egg blue, the colour of certain type of duck eggs. In a world where no human has been born in 18 years, the use of colour so associated with the beginning of life is quite the juxtaposition. In conclusion, the opening scene of Children of Men provides an excellent amount of exposition in a short amount of time, which can engage the audience from the get-go. We learn through oral stimuli that the world is worse than our own, and through visual stimuli that the inhabitants of the world are exhausted, afraid and sad. The shaky camera technique is utilised to make us anxious, leaving us guessing what may come next, and the colour palette smartly makes use of duck egg blue, a teal shade which is often associated with new life in a world where life is slowly dying off.